All right, supposedly up. Let's check. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Move this stupid cord so it doesn't keep making bumping noises. Mute myself. Edit video. Out to contents. Where is it? No, live. Monetization on, please. Get the load. View live. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Set to live chat. And I did message Josh, so he theoretically should show up. All right, as usual, like around 10 minutes we'll start for real, so 9 minutes left on that. In the meantime, we'll set everything up real quick. Starting with my eternal nemesis, the ever uncooperative Google Earth. Come on. Come on, Google. You can do it. There we go. And actually, while we wait for people to arrive, I can go ahead and show you guys some of the maps and stuff that I mentioned in that community post. So I've been working on. I've been working on. I apologize if you hear that noise in the background. One of my parents' neighbors is working with power tools and is sawing through metal for something. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I've been constructing maps to show uh, how much and which portions of different areas or different regions have been explored for oil and gas. So to give you an idea of like what's left that has not been touched, where stuff could be found. This one obviously is the Caspian Sea, which is about 90% fully explored. Azerbaijan still has that northeast bit. There is some bit offshore of Dagestan, close to their maritime line off for Russia. Uh, there's a tiny bit of Turkmenistan's waters, and then a decent portion of Iran's Caspian Sea bit. And you don't see any grayed out portions here because the entire Caspian Sea is oil and gas bearing. But for some, for some countries, like for example here Bolivia, for areas like the mountain ranges, the highlands, or folded regions where everything's been like upcycled and the oil and gas wouldn't have survived even if it did form there long ago. I grayed out where there would not be any oil, but yeah, red shaded in area is where oil and gas exploration has been conducted thoroughly. And keep in mind, not all oil and gas bearing area is the same. Like, for example, Ecuador is only about like a quarter the size of Bolivia. However, Ecuador ended up having way more oil, whereas here in Bolivia, which is actually I think more than 4 times Ecuador's size, half of Bolivia's potentially oil and gas bearing regions have been explored over time. However, all that was found there ended up only being enough to get Bolivia up to a peak production of, I think, around 130,000 barrels per day, from which they have long fallen down and declined from that. So the amount of unexplored area isn't always like a giver there. Different lands and stuff uh, do contain like different densities, different setups. Where is it? Community. But yeah, if you want to see all of them, at least the ones I posted so far, under the community tab on the latest post, I put the Google Docs link that you can go to. And there's some I just finished that are not there yet. How much time? Right, 5 minutes. So about 5 minutes. About 5 minutes, we'll start for real. Let's get this up. And they're, I'm pretty sure they stopped. I thought I saw wheat's price move for just a second. But yeah, the weekend's hit now, so these have stopped. And oil is now back up over $91 per barrel, which is about, as I was saying last time, where it should be. It should have been in the 80s the entire time, like this entire time that it was down here over summer, it really should have stayed in the 80s. Now, under the current conditions, it should be up in the lower 90s, and it has actually, for once, appropriately climbed up to the lower 90s where it should be. I'm not used to prices actually complying with reality, mainly because silver is still down there in the lower 20s, hiding out, a solid $10 to $15 below where it should be. Copper, like I said last time, should be up around $4.50, but nothing's actually going the way it should. No background noise, even now. He's sawing through it. Like literally the moment I read your comment that you say you couldn't hear it, he started sawing stuff again. But I'll take your word for it. Where's Josh? Why has Josh not showed up yet? Darn, I'm gonna have to actually look at my own chat. Uh, yeah, probably 3 more minutes till it start for real. Yeah, then this is Brazil, and because of the way it's set up, like there still probably will be some bit this far out, but not a whole lot. But I did include that bit in like the possibility area. But predominantly everything remaining will still be around like this, and then the main shelf setup like right here, which is what this was. But yeah, so 80% of Brazil's 3.5 million barrels per day that they're up to now is all just from this bit right here, which is connected and shared with obviously this bit, which has not yet been touched. So Brazil, if exploration and stuff does take place here, at least relatively soon, Brazil still has quite a bit that they can go with. 2 minutes. Let's chug some water. Oh yeah, then you got China. Like I said, China for the most part is screwed. They are pretty spent. They onshore, everything has been gone through except for a southern chunk, like a southern quarter or so of the Taklamakan Desert Basin. They haven't explored at all, but they've begun pressing offshore now. They've basically done the whole Bohai Bay area. They've done this portion of shelf off of the southern provinces here, and they've done a random bit out here. They just went all the way out there for some reason. But doing all this offshore stuff right around here over the last few years only turned up enough to bump them up by several 100,000 barrels a day and hold off their decline for a little bit. So this collective area, the Bohai Bay, this offshore shelf area, and this area out here, again, this is a bigger area than that Brazil offshore shelf area where most of Brazil's production is coming from. This is more area than that. However, this only yielded enough to bump them back up by about 400,000 barrels a day. So again, not all like setups, even if they are physically the same, they will not all yield the same. So China is screwed from that angle, along with from many other angles. All right, that should be 10 minutes. All right, no Josh, but no background noise. All right, we will build up to the big things, so I can have an excuse to give people just a little bit more time to show up. But actually, most of the stuff here is big. Quite a lot of things have been happening. One of them, Libya. Where is Erna? I'm not that familiar with cities. I know provinces and stuff and states of most countries. I'm not that familiar. Cities. There is Derna, although I don't remember most of Libya's provinces at the moment. So Derna here on Libya's Mediterranean coast got majorly flooded by a devastating storm over the prior weekend, I believe it was. And not just the city getting devastated, but two dams completely collapsed. So that drastically affected things as well. And now everything's in ruins, and the water supply is gone, and also everything is full of contaminated standing water in the area because the dams broke. And so now they, on top of just having everything collapse from the flooding and whatnot, they now have the issue of all that now toxic water standing around because it's water that's swept through like everything that was in the city, and also now has cadavers, dead bodies floating in it. So it's becoming toxic pretty quickly, and they don't exactly. The only clean water they have to work with is whatever gets either flown or trucked into them. And as of the present moment, the official count is, I think, 11,300 dead people, roughly, plus another 10,000 or so who are still listed as missing. But it's been like, I believe, 5 days at this point. So outside of a few miracle cases, like you'll always see, uh, that people, whoever's still missing, has been trapped, under multiple tons of rubble for over 5 days now. So 99.9% of those 10,000 people who are still missing are already dead. So that is likely 21,000 or so dead people, plus the city itself is effectively gone, plus the 40,000 other people who are not dead, who are still uh, stuck there, are now surrounded by increasingly toxic standing water because the dams have collapsed, and also don't have water or power because the dams collapsed. So you got that going on, and Colonel, what's his face, the guy who runs the East, uh, who wants to be like the next Gaddafi, the next military dictator. Despite all those uh, all those tens of thousands of dead people, one of his main complaints was that he lost five of his troops. So he has five less soldiers with which to repeatedly attack the western portion of the country with to uh, try to stake his claim as dictator with. So, sad day for him, I guess. There's no effects on the oil flow out from Libya. Most of that primarily goes through ports here around Tripoli, some here. and some over here. So that's not affected, but that city is effectively gone. And then right next to them, Egypt is getting pretty bad for the people, most of whom are not of even remotely middle class income, even. Inflation in Egypt has reached 40%. You know, many countries were complaining over the last like few years of like, 7, 8, or 9% inflation. Egypt has hit 40% inflation. And then you have countries like Argentina and Turkey who are just absolutely down spiraling with like 120%. But Egypt has hit 40% inflation. And this is combined with the fact that the geniuses in their government in Cairo to save money on the budget, instead of, deciding to not do their whole brand new political enclave isolated capital with all black tinted super skyscrapers out in the desert because they're trying to imitate like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. Instead of, putting that project off to save money that way, the geniuses in Cairo decided to cut the food subsidies to the lower income portion of Egypt's population as their method of saving money, which is brilliant. That almost caused violent riots. And then the other week, they were going to cut the electricity subsidies for the majority of the population, which would have seen people's electricity bills abruptly double. And that actually did start causing uh, some small riots. They didn't have a chance to grow. And then the government decided, to walk that decision back because they finally realized, if we don't want the people to have an uprising against us, the best way to keep the people from doing that is to not give them a reason to want to uprise against us in the first place. But that food subsidy was cut several months ago, and now that's stacking with the fact that inflation in Egypt has hit 40%. So that might be working its way towards a boil over. We might get a 2011 repeat. Nigeria has had uh, just a couple days ago, Nigeria experienced and is technically still experiencing because the power's not back yet, what everyone's waiting for South Africa to experience, a total power grid collapse. So Nigeria went like full zero, no exaggeration, full absolute zero, no power except for the oil and gas industry because they have their own backup systems, and whatever private enterprises have their own like on-site generators. The country's grid went down, and it's been 3 days, I think, or it might be four. They've managed to restore about a quarter of the country's power generation, and it's actually ironically easier, despite the fact that you could consider Nigeria's grid more dilapidated. It's actually easier for Nigeria to switch things back on faster because they don't actually have a well integrated and well designed modern grid. A lot of it is like really haphazard, slapped together. However they could manage to do it over the decades and in between, the Civil War and everything else. So it's more like busted chunks all over the place. It's not like entirely all interwoven and everything. So it that ironically makes it actually a bit easier for them to turn it back on without too much issue, but still a complete and absolute collapse. No matter what your setup is, still for one isn't good, obviously, and for two takes a while to flip everything back on from. So it's been either 3 or 4 days, and they've restored about a quarter of the country's power. I don't know which like areas, which cities, which states have their power back, but three-quarters of the country still is in complete blackout as of this present moment. So if you have any friends or colleagues or contacts in Nigeria and you abruptly lost contact with them a few days ago, now you potentially know why. Right. There was there was something else. There was one other thing. Oh yeah. So the power players, that's everyone on the African supremacy uh, dethrone the West Twitter sphere or whatever. The big power players, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, are continuing to impress everyone with their projection of their industrial economic prowess and their military might as random attacks across the Sahel region have upscaled. And yeah, both of their forces are Mali and Niger are actually taking hard L's in these battles with the like random Islamic the different Islamic militant groups. Like there were several in Mali, several clashes at several villages where the casualty ratio between the like Malian military and the Islamic militants was like 1 for 1. It was even. That is not good. That's not something to brag about. So that's not really boding well. In Niger, across Niger, many towns and regions are closing schools and telling families to keep their kids at home because the various militant groups now feel empowered by the instability and are roaming the region. And many of them, especially if they see girls going to school, usually they'll execute them because that's forbidden in their particular their hardcore Islam thing. What's the name of the hardcore one? Uh, Salafism, I think. Salafism, yeah, it's like Salafism or something like that, or was it Wahhabism? I don't remember which of the two. And then Burkina Faso, whereas Libya had several dams fail because of massive flooding, receiving like 10 times as much rain as they receive in a single year overnight. Burkina Faso also just had a dam collapse with no excuse uh, other than other than it was really really poorly built. And yeah, so that flooded. I don't know if it was that one right there that's like that reservoir right there that's blatantly visible, but and even if it was that one and that one's like now empty or something, we wouldn't be able to see it because this is just regular Google Earth. I'm not paying $10 a month for Google Earth Premium to get the like hourly updated images or whatever that gets you. But yeah, Ghana is now suffering flooding in its northern region because of a dam collapse in Burkina Faso because the water came, downriver into Ghana and flooded stuff, including quite a number of cacao plantations where they grow the cacao plant, which has cocoa beans, which which let us make chocolate, and so that is exacerbating, or will be exacerbating, a what was already a severe problem, as cocoa prices are going way up and are now not actually at an all-time high, because the all-time high was back in the 70s during the civil war in Cote d'Ivoire, as Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana's neighbor, is the biggest cocoa producer in the world. I believe Ghana is the second. Ghana, at the same time, back in the 70s, was also going through a harsh drought, so that was affecting things. So those two combined, and this graph is not adjusted for inflation. So that was close to 5K. So converted inflation-wise, uh, equivocally, prices hit close to $20,000 a ton back then. Back then, at the moment, they've been heading up towards 4,000. But that is again not actually equivocal to what those prices would have actually been in today's dollars. But yeah, so now Ghana's suffering flooding in the north because Burkina Faso had a dam collapse. Probably one of many collapses to come from Burkina Faso. So yeah, the big three breakaway uh, power player military junta dictator buddies are, they're showing their stuff. They're showing the world. Real impressive. Oh, all right. Well, we're up to about 14 now. I think that means we can hit some of the stuff. Okay, so uh, here we have Ukraine, the ongoing Ukraine conflict, and Russia is proving themselves immensely adequate in military decision making once again. So, despite the fact that Crimea here is now completely within Ukraine's strike range because they have Storm Shadow and various other cruise missiles that they've been given, Russia decided here at Sevastopol to dock two of their ships again. Despite the fact that the last few times they did that, said docked ships were hit and sunk. However, they decided, I guess, hey, maybe 15th times the charm or something. So they docked a one of their they docked one of their landers, one of their amphibious ships that they are using now to ferry supplies to and from Crimea because Ukraine keeps smashing the bridges, and they Russia itself keeps shutting down the Kerch Bridge like every other day because they spot drones in the area. So one of the landing ships was docked, and also one of Russia's submarines. One of the few things left Russia has that they try to retain like bragging rights about like being even remotely comparable with the West's military equipment. And both of those were taken out, and we can see Russia insists that they're not, that they're only minorly damaged. However, you know, you can kind of see it's pretty messed up. Got the center blown out, the whole dry dock's gone. You can look in on the sub there, and apart from the fact that everything was on fire and that the integrity of that metal is no longer viable, you can see the giant hole in the front. So yeah, I'm sure the sub is usable. Go ahead, just load everybody in it and dive. I'm sure it's fine. So that is uh, the fifth the fifth amphibious cargo transport ship that Ukraine has hit. So on paper, you will see that Russia supposedly has 18 of them. However, only six of them matter because it only has six for its Black Sea fleet, and that is now five out of the picture. So the moment that Ukraine does like another huge strike on the Kerch Bridge and most likely and preferably hits the land bridge railways that Russia's also trying to rely on at the same time, they have that one amphibious cargo transport left, and that will literally be it. and to then once with the smaller bridges to mainland Ukraine cut presumably at the same time, that ship would be forced to come to Berdyansk most likely, which is even more within range of things. So that's 5 out of 6 landing vessels down, a sub down, which I was never expecting to see that one. And then quite a number of other bad equipment losses. They are at 2,300 tanks lost. Now, again, like I said before, only 200 of those tanks, or sorry, only 2,000 of those tanks were from their quote unquote modern arsenal. Modern just meaning it was something from after 1970, out of which they had roughly 3,200 at the start of the war, plus the 100 that they have manufactured since then. So that's a net total of 3,300. 2,000 of which are gone. The extra 300 in that 2,300 are old T-62s and T-64s, and now even T-55s that they pulled out of storage and threw onto the front lines. They are almost at 50 Ka-52 helicopters shot down. That's their primary go-to. Their that's their primary hyper most like modernized attack helicopter. They had a grand total of about 130. They have now lost roughly 50, and they have managed to replace, aka manufacture new ones. They've managed to replace 4 over the last year and a half. So going good. Military industrial superpower. And then there's all kinds of other stuff. Where are they at now? 530 self-propelled howitzers, artillery pieces taken out of a total of 1,600, and they're not manufacturing anymore. They're now up to 2,300 military supply trucks destroyed out of a starting fleet of a mere 3,000. And assuming that their one truck manufacturing factory has been working overtime, and has actually been producing the roughly dozen a month that it's capable of. That would give them, assumably, we'll round it up to a new 250 since the start of the war. So that'll be a total of 3,250. So that's less than 1,000 military supply trucks remaining. For comparison, the U.S. maintains a military supply truck fleet of roughly 20,000 or so. Then, well, so we got the SAM systems. Oh, yes, the SAM systems. They're now up to about 165 taken out, plus roughly between 30 and 50, it's not entirely certain, that have now been sunk into use outside of the actual theater because of all the drone attacks that Ukraine has done across various locations. Uh, Part of the purpose of those, they did hit stuff, but part of the purpose was also just to goad Russia into sinking air defense assets into like Moscow, Kursk, Bryansk, and even Pskov now. So that's like 30 to 50 that are sunk in that can't be like deployed for use in the field. And then also there's whatever amount they have to maintain in their overseas like deployments that they uh, hold on to try to pretend that they're the U.S. And uh, let's see, is there anything else I want to throw on that? Uh, Not all that much. Let's see. Okay, outside of the military aspects, things continue unraveling. So everyone, turned away. from Russia in terms of gas and oil. Now, even one of their only two friends and real purchasers remaining, India, has been turning away. India dialed down their imports from Russia by 300,000 barrels a day, replacing them with oil from Iran and Iraq. And now Iran is dialing up their output further because the deal got reached between the US and Iran. So now the sanctions are easing away. And so India is going to cut off their imports from Russia by likely another 200,000 barrels per day less, which are going to be replaced with the extra 200,000 barrels per day of Iranian production that Iran has turned on over the last several weeks. So now Russia is spiraling down the drain in that regard. And the one thing it was really holding on to was the refining and manufacturing of nuclear fuel, the production from raw uranium into actual nuclear fuel. Rosatom was one of the world's biggest in that regard, and yeah, U.S. nuclear fuel makers already started construction on expanded facilities and capacity to be able to make that the bulk amount of fuel that Russia does to be able to replace that capacity. And that is like one of the longer term things. It will be that stuff will be finished and will come online in early 2026. But every country that was primarily or still is primarily getting nuclear fuel from Rosatom is immediately going to switch over to Westinghouse once that capacity is ready in 2026. The only countries that said they were going to stay with Russia and keep getting their fuel from Russia until their 10-year contracts run out in 2030 were Turkey, Bulgaria for some reason, and Hungary. To the surprise of no one, Hungary uh, has been Russia's biggest simp through all of this. However, Magyarország changed their mind to my shock the other day. They actually announced that they're in negotiations to get their nuclear fuel from elsewhere, which is really shocking given like just how much of a diehard simp Orban is for Putin. So I was actually really surprised to hear that one. Of course, they may double back on it for all I know. And then there was also, I think this one actually was in like mainstream news, but uh, out in central Russia, a A320 went down. It didn't crash and explode or anything. Everybody survived. They were able to emergency land it. But now, as was expected, after a year and a half or so, Russia's civil aviation is going to start seeing increasingly frequent issues as they, have the whole problem with recruits because most of their stuff is Boeing and Airbus. And despite having Sukhoi and the MC aircraft lines, they somehow, for some reason, just can't produce the stuff really in any meaningful amount. Oh wait, that's because the engineers left. Some when everything started, some when the draft came, because when the whole mobilization happened last September, uh, you know, there was no organization to that. They literally actually did like send draft notices to like to like engineers and scientists and things, people you would assume you don't want to randomly throw to their deaths on the front line. But hey, it's Russia. So in both instances, when things started and when the mobilization happened, uh, engineers were, among the biggest group to leave because, for one, they make a lot of money comparatively to everyone else, so they would have money to leave Russia. and also because they wouldn't be, blockaded off by like the visa bans and everything like most of the regular common citizenry would, because they're like in this particular case they're aviation they're aeronautical engineers and stuff. That's valuable skills. So uh, various countries would wave that through. So now Russia's starting to have problems because they really can't really get their own like civil aviation manufacturing industry up and going. But their civil aviation is going to start taking its downturn. Uh, they have already uh, they have already permanently grounded roughly 20% of their fleet for the sake of cannibalizing for spare parts. They and they are able to get some spare parts through smuggling, but they can't uh, can't really get the software, the proprietary stuff through smuggling, and they can't smuggle a sat nav connection. So everything is continuing with its downward spiral, and wasn't further evident enough. For a second time, Putin has gone to Kim Jong Un, or Rocket Man, as one of the few good things I got from Trump was his presidency was full of memes. So Putin has visited Rocket Man to beg for artillery shells because North Korea has millions upon millions of old Cold War artillery shells, and so the whole thing is flipped. For the longest time, it was Russia propping up North Korea, and then in modern times, it's more China propping up North Korea. But now it's North Korea having to prop up Russia. So the whole world is twisted on its head, been around real good. Okay, I've ignored chat quite a lot. Okay, blah blah blah. Uh, 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 a lot of the stuff like you're assuming would happen here is literally would only happen if like if this especially with like the nuclear reactor stuff. That's not how it works. That you're what you're thinking of is like a uh literally everyone just suddenly disappears. That's not how it works. If things were like looking bad and going dark, like it, we can shut reactors down really easily, and also their own like 50,000 dead man switches would also shut themselves down. That's on the like the U.S. power grid thing, the live monitor thing that I show you guys sometimes. On you see here, purple line, the one that I'm hovering over the most is nuclear power, pretty constant, except for you see sudden dips like that that last really briefly. Those abrupt dips, those are when something in the system trips one of the safety protocols, and a reactor somewhere automatically shuts itself down. It automatically just rams the control rods into the spaces between the actual fuel rods, and clamps down on the whole thing. They do that to themselves like all the time, even on just like a glitch. So you'll see stuff like that, but that's because they're designed with a few exceptions. Certain countries, they're designed to like auto kill themselves. Excuse me, excuse me. What are you what are you doing? Can you return to normal? Return to normal. Thank you. Yeah. Also the ozone refrigerant stuff. That I mean that would only build up if we continually kept making more of it, which if we all are suddenly dead, we wouldn't be. Blah blah blah. It does make sense to continue from Putin's perspective, because you have to understand the psychology of a strong man, as because there's different types of dictators. There's dictators who are just in power, and that's it. They're just running the country. They're not like interested in projecting an image of any kind. Then you have royalty, which still exists in the modern day, and it's not in Europe. It's in North Korea with the literal Kim dynasty. I'm sure like it's not a case of Western propaganda. It's actually a case of North Korean propaganda because they're the ones who show the videos of masses of hundreds of thousands of people in public squares, all but worshiping formerly, Kim Il Sung, then Kim Jong Il, now Kim Jong Un. Then there are strong men, and Putin with his ever shirtless photo ops is a strong man, and strong men uh, can't go back on what they do, because that would imply that they made a mistake, which would imply that they're fallible, which would imply that they're weak, and would imply they could be potentially removed. So his only like real hope is to keep this going and hope for a 1 in a million odds that we all suddenly decide to stop, or even worse odds against him, 1 in a trillion odds that Ukraine decides that it's not that it's finally done killing Russians. Well, that's not going to happen because nobody is. Like the Taliban still isn't done killing Russians. But So he has to keep this going because whether anyone actually would like take him out, because Prigozhin was gonna try until it turned out he was either stupid and just believed random promises, or he just suddenly had no balls anymore, despite the fact that he had managed to plow his way up through three oblasts and was less than 100 miles from Moscow. But whether anyone else would like actually take him out, or he would be wise enough to like flee somewhere like Cuba or Venezuela. Either way, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to flee. He especially doesn't want to die, and obviously probably doesn't want to be in prison either. So, in his mind, if he suddenly like pulls out of this, uh, it's over, or he is over personally. Now, is Russia going to be over? Yeah, that fate is sealed now, and technically so is his. But you know, as long as he keeps it going, he keeps himself alive until it like caves in on itself, and he can't keep it going anymore because there's nothing to keep going. Then the fate he's trying to avoid inevitably comes for him. but that was kind of locked in from the get-go. And oh yeah, to the south, potential conflicts. So I've talked in the past about various conflicts that are coming. Like later, I assumed later this decade or early 2030s, there would inevitably be a war between Turkey and Iran. Turkey would win, as Iran has really nothing going for it, except to some extent, under certain circumstances, it would have militant fervor going for it among its troops, but that would be about it. It has 60-year-old aircraft primarily that it can't get parts for because no one makes them anymore. So it effectively doesn't have an air force. It doesn't. It wants to pretend it has like actual cruise missiles, but it doesn't. It has really fancy, like upkept, uh, you know, ballistic lob and drop rockets. Uh, more modern V2-ish kind of stuff. But yeah, Iran would or will lose because I'm definitively certain this war is coming no matter what. Then after that, as Turkey continues trying to reestablish its Ottoman stuff, it's inevitably going to come into northern Iraq. That's going to bring it into conflict with U.S. and friends, not just NATO, but like everybody else. Especially the Aussies. The Aussies are always there. Aussies love a good fight. Is my explanation for it. So Aussies, if you have a war somewhere, the Aussies will show up no matter what. But yeah, that was coming, and it might happen a bit earlier than I was expecting it to. But that has been a trend for a lot of things. So there's the whole Azerbaijan Armenia tension going on right now, especially with the blockade of the Nagorno-Karabakh region and the fact that people are almost starving to death there and are being deprived of medicine, and UN groups are having to like constantly evacuate people by the dozen every day from the region, never to return to their homes again. So Azerbaijan is trying to commit ethnic cleansing by that means, since they know they couldn't actually get away with just straight up killing everyone. This isn't the pre 1950s anymore. But there's also the issue of the whole 16 million plus Azeri population in northwestern Iran, which have to started to cry out about the oppression and in that they suffer under Tehran's regime. And as usual, in response to them wanting to not be oppressed, the regime in Tehran has decided that the proper response is to oppress them even harder. And so started arresting. They've started arresting university professors around the region and have started shutting down schools and everything, which you know doing starting to dismantle your education stuff because they also have arrested regular Iranian university professors and stuff because that's who politicians always blame for starting political uprisings. Dismantling your whole education pipeline isn't like a good thing for building up your country's future. But yeah, they're shutting all that down. They have now been moving additional military forces up into the region, not just to keep the people down, but also because uh, they have outright stated and, in their case, likely do mean what they say when they say it, that if Azerbaijan starts another thing with Armenia again, like in 2020, or like the brief bit last year, if Azerbaijan starts something again, Iran has said that they will like fully intervene on Armenia's behalf, which would spark it up finally between Azerbaijan and Iran, which would be the trigger Turkey's waiting for them to enter. In which case, yeah, then Iran loses. Uh, Turkey pushes through this area, and that would go to Azerbaijan. Whether it's recognized like on the world map or not is irrelevant. So that is coming a step closer to reality now. Now that Iran is literally moving additional forces to the area and put it on the table that they will fully retaliate if Azerbaijan actually goes for Armenia again. And just to the south of them, to throw something else on the table before we go over to the other big topic, if from the stream title, Iraq. I've told you guys repeatedly, assuming you're familiar with by now, Iraq is probably gonna leave OPEC sometime soon-ish. By sometime soonish, I mean I would expect it within this decade, sometime within the 2020s. As OPEC to this day is still basically just whatever Saudi Arabia says, and like Qatar did before them, Iraq is kind of getting sick of having to play alone. As show you here, Iraq, get to Iraq, trade, crude oil production. Oops. So there's all the times it collapsed because of the crazy stuff Saddam was doing and failed to really get itself together because of more crazy stuff he was doing. And seeing this reality that Iraq's oil production was never going to reach its full potential as long as Saddam was there was the actual it was about oil, in quotation marks. People usually don't have any real idea what they mean when they say that. That was the actual like why as to, how slash why the 2003 Iraq war and deposing Saddam was about oil. Because US slash other allies like collective intelligence realized that, for one, the first peak of global oil production was coming later in the 2000s, and also that Iraq was never going to get up towards its full production potential as long as Saddam was around doing crazy stuff. So they decided he had to go, and yeah. So if because you see, it was on its way down there, and if that had not been turned around or at least stalled, then the deficit during the first global oil peak would have been considerably worse than it was. But okay, there we go. But yeah, here every time Iraq keeps going back up towards five and wanting to go over five, Saudi Arabia, you know, insists on new production cuts and wants and demands that they comply and everything. So Iraq has constantly been held back by Saudi Arabia, and they're about done with it because it's been almost a decade of it now. So Iraq, as of the last couple months, is done with following orders. You see, they're supposed to be holding their oil production at 4 million barrels per day under the current production cuts. However, they are being disobedient as of the present moment because they have started to raise their production back up and are at the moment at 4.1 million barrels per day and intend to keep bringing it back upwards, despite getting scolded by Saudi Arabia for doing so. So this is how it begins. It starts with just disobedience, refusing to actually follow the quota as it's been set by OPEC, and eventually it turns into actually leaving OPEC. So, like Qatar did in the 2010s, I suspect the 2020s, Iraq is eventually going to leave because as of this moment, they're no longer actually following the rules. They said, screw this, we're gonna pump whatever amount we want. We want we're despondently poor and we want to get more income. Saudi Arabia can say whatever it wants. Phantoms. Oh yeah, that's probably from the Iraq stuff. Or sorry, the Iran stuff. Yeah, Iran primarily. Iran has F4 Phantoms, which are actually from like 1960, and F-14 Tomcats, which are from later in the 60s. And again, the thing is, like on paper, they have about 400 of them, like put together, but they really don't. The the more benefit of the doubt estimates in their favor are that they have about 120 functional, because again, they would have they would have run out of all the spare parts. They would have stockpiled by now, everything they could have gotten smuggled from other owners, and would have had to start cannibalizing at this point. And they can't get anything smuggled in anymore because those parts aren't being manufactured anymore. So they don't really have that much going for them. And yeah, oh yeah, even in the midst of this, like when this eventually starts, in the midst of this, Israel would almost certainly start striking Iran on their own, of their own accord, anyways. They already have, actually. One of Iran's primary drone manufacturing facilities uh, in this region here was already hit by Israel, and it was also partially at our behest. Me speaking from the U.S., it was partially at our behest because they did it with F-35s, as as a test of the F-35, uh, because Iran does have some slightly modern AD systems, and by that I mean it has quote unquote modern-ish radars from Russia, or it has the best AD systems that Russia is willing to sell, and the F-35s were not detected at all. That there wasn't even any like blind flak fire, like just trying to randomly hit them, like with the F-117s over Baghdad, because the F-117 Nighthawk, it was pretty invisible to radar, but it was kind of pick upable. Like if you had multiple signals like hitting its general vicinity at once, you could kind of get some feedback and tell that there was something there, but you couldn't really like lock onto it. It was like a 1 in a million, and that 1 in a million was during the Kosovo intervention stuff in Serbia, and also they were on orders to fly low, like absurdly low, way lower than they should have been. And I guess you could call the phrases head headcanon or something. I guess my headcanon deduction is that that was like heavily deliberate, on the hopes that one would get shot down, and with the aim of us intentionally letting one get shot down, being that it would give the message or wave to like our adversaries that they in large part seemed to have actually bought into, and that was that stealth wasn't really as good as it potentially could be, and it wasn't worth putting that much into it, when in fact actually, yeah, it is. The F-22 is invisible, the B-2 is invisible, the B-21 is even more invisible because it's going to fly at 70,000 feet. But yeah, the F-35 is also apparently invisible because like I said, the F-117s in the stuff in Iraq over Baghdad, they like the Iraqi air defense systems, they like kind of saw that there was stuff coming, and so there was blind flak fire going up across the sky. And if you can watch a bunch of like Gulf War interviews of F-117 pilots talking about flying through it, and just hoping that they don't get a random strafing. There was not even any uh, any flak fire or anything when the F-35s on Israel that Israel sent those two times hit the stuff in Iran. There was zero hint of detection. And also there was the fun time there was the fun time that we had F-22s stalking because a lot of the airstrikes that the Syrian regime does on random hospitals in Syria are actually carried out by Russian forces in Syria. There were several fun times back in the 2010s where F-22 pilots from the U.S. Air Force stationed in Iraq were just like flying behind Russian aircraft in Syria, just like stalking them around, like not 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 necessarily for fun, like they were under orders to as part of testing the stealth, but for the pilots, it was essentially doing it for fun because they were just stalking them around for like half an hour, waiting to see if their rear-facing radar like ever picked up anything, inching closer and closer, seeing if they get detected. But if they weren't detected. All right, what else do we got here? Oh, yeah. Well, it's time for the other big one. It's time for the China-Taiwan stuff. So, as I said before, this year, not likely to be invasion year. By now, you would have seen way more stuff built up. Like I said, 20% chance of it happening this year. Starting next year, though, I tip the probability over 50%. However, you may recall me saying in past streams and videos that I did expect them to do another practice run this year, and they are at the moment. I believe this made it to regular mainstream news, but at the moment, one Chinese carrier is here, another's like down here with their associated groups, and they have been practicing like rapid launch deployments of the aircraft, like getting as many up and off the carrier as possible. So they are doing practice runs, and they have also been doing wave run-bys. And by that I mean like dozens of aircraft over the course of several hours passing through the very fringe edge of Taiwan's AD zone. They did something similar with the aircraft waves back in April, and also uh, military large contingent shipments of tanks and IFVs and stuff and other military vehicles have been filmed by random Chinese citizens rolling down the rails towards the various ports across from Taiwan, which again happened last year at the start of fall, and they were like filling up like parking garages and stuff full of tanks and other vehicles, and causing, ironically, kind of funny, causing a lot of complaints among Chinese citizens that they couldn't park their cars in their normal spots because the parking garages were full of tanks. But that is a it's a it's a force accumulation practice, making sure that they have everything like unclogged, and they know what they're doing when they attempt to, on the real thing, rush everything there as fast as possible. And that, again, likely not this year because there's too much we would have seen by now if they were actually going to try it this year. Next year, though, is when it tips over into like a serious possibility each year thereafter with now 2025 being the most likely, but they could, jump the gun and go next year. They could wait a little bit. The waiting would be really unadvisable though, on their end because uh, we we've already given Taiwan a few Abrams tanks. We're going to be handing them more. We've been giving them NASAM anti-air systems. We've been giving them what was the other one? What was the anti-missile system? Patriots. Patriot batteries have already been spotted at various bases around Taiwan. We are going to we're going to be giving them the ultra modernized version of the F-16. We also, I believe, sometime soon, like within the next few months, are going to start giving them HIMARS launchers. We're also going to give them. We've also already been stockpiling them with javelins and other anti-tank missile systems. And what else? What else was on the waiting list? We were going to give them. Oh yeah, uh, since we're retiring like the remainder of our Cobra attack helicopters. We were going to hand those over to them since they already use them and they're already familiar with them. So the longer China waits, the more bulked up Taiwan gets. Not that the invasion was ever going to succeed, anyways, but it's only going to get worse the longer they wait. However, they're they're just not ready, and the time cross between Taiwan getting bulked up and China being even remotely really ready, they just don't cross at a good time. So it's all kind of screwed one way or another. Blah blah to the okay, not not too much. There it is. Wait, is did Josh ever show up? Where's Josh? Ugh, okay. More stupid ideas. So, uh, the UAE is now country number three that has joined the list of uh, countries alongside Mexico and Indonesia that want to brute force rain. The UAE has announced that it is going to start doing cloud seeding and, adding even more demand onto our increasingly thin margined supply of silver because cloud seeding uh, is basically dumping hundreds of tons of silver iodide into clouds to force them to rain. And that silver is not recyclable. Just it falls down with the rain, washes away, into soil or sands. It drifts off in the water vapor on the winds into oblivion. So that is never to be recovered silver. And Indonesia has already been repeatedly cloud seeding to try to force rain over Jakarta because of how smog-ridden the city is. They have been cloud seeding to force it to rain to try to like ground the smog via rain. Mexico was going to do cloud seeding to try to end its drought. Thankfully, it's been raining in Mexico, so that's put off their stupid ideas for the moment. But now the UAE has decided they're going to start cloud seeding everything that even remotely drifts over them, so that they can get some water, save some money on the desalination. and instead spend the money on constant flights dumping hundreds of tons of silver iodide across the sky, because stupidity is like the most popular thing right now, I guess. Then, oh yeah, over here. So, you want to get even more stupid? Almost all, like even like even the most rundown countries, like they have their own power management. Usually, it's like a nationalized company, and it's not run very well. But still, the company can like keep generating the power even in the absence of money, just on the orders of the government. By threat of force if necessary. In uh, Sierra Leone doesn't generate its own electricity, and it's not getting electricity from its neighbors either. The electricity is generated by a Turkish company on big generator ships that dock in the port and run big giant generators on board, and that's connected to a grid that then gives the country electricity. Well, the government of Sierra Leone, as of this week, no longer has money. It cannot afford to pay the Turkish company that's responsible for generating the country's power. So said Turkish company switched the power off for the country of Sierra Leone and is, I guess, going to pull the ship away out of port. Uh, threat of force from Sierra Leone doesn't really mean anything because they don't really have a military. But so they said they're not going to restart any power until they get paid. So now Sierra Leone is in full blackout and not getting restarted like Nigeria is attempting to do because Sierra Leone can't restart themselves because they're not even the ones generating their power. And some far-reaching effects of the of Russia's war in Ukraine. So this is Myanmar or Burma. It's been in an off and on civil war for the last 50 years. And the last few years, the military junta has decided to get like excessively brutal and has been just bombing random villages left and right, as the way they have phrased it in their public announcements as acts of retribution against the rebels. And the rebels haven't really taken it that well. It's kind of just angered them more and made more people join them and is encouraging them to fight harder. But Myanmar, ever taking after Russia, is just repeating the same strategy over and over again. And now their mechanized capability is starting to degrade as they can't really move a lot of like their vehicles and stuff as they're starting to run out of spare parts for those. And also they the rebel forces plant like anti tank mines, anti vehicle mines and stuff, and Myanmar can't clear them because the government cannot it can't fix the few mine clearing vehicles that it has, and those along with its other vehicles are all Russian for the most part, and it can't get any new ones because uh, Russia's any that it, for one isn't manufacturing them anymore, and for two, any Russia had that it could have sent to them have been destroyed in Ukraine. So the military dictatorship in Myanmar is just screwed in regards to any ability to replace military equipment, as it also seems China doesn't really have that much of an interest in supplying them with stuff anymore. China's only concern is whether they keep getting the shipments of tin from the tin mines. Whether it's Myanmar is considered like a China-aligned nation in terms of its government, but China actually wouldn't really care who's in power as long as they keep getting the tin. And also, they're reasonably confident in their ability to secure the tin, anyways, even if stuff did happen. So things aren't going so well for the military junta in Myanmar anymore. All right. What else do we got here now? Let's see. Russia, Iraq, Iran, Libya, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, China-Taiwan stuff. I think we might have actually gone through almost everything already. Let me just double check the list here. Uh, yeah, actually, to my surprise, I think we're actually done with the list. All right, I am not used to that. I'm used to things like dragging way on, usually my fault, but uh, no new messages in chats, no super chats. All right, I have no idea where I was about to go. All right, so I think that might actually be it for this one. If anybody like had any specific things to say or questions to ask, I'll wait like a minute for those. Unless they end up being something that like I don't feel like responding to. Although now that I'm looking at it, I feel like looking at the list, I feel like I forgot to put something on it, but I'll do one of these again next week, like always. Drink some water. Uh, I talked about Armenia already earlier in the stream. Once the stream's over, you can go back and like watch the recording of it from the beginning. I don't recall when was the Armenia stuff. The Armenia slash Azerbaijan slash Iran slash Turkey stuff with a little bit of Israel thrown in. It was after the Russia Ukraine stuff. I think I'm pretty positive that's roughly when it was. But yeah, the now that Iran has started moving forces there, uh, has started moving forces there, and pretty blatantly told Azerbaijan publicly on stage that they are going to like step in if Azerbaijan goes after Armenia again, like they did in 2020. That that would flare everything, and then on Azerbaijan's behalf, Turkey would come in, starting the war that I have called and expected between Turkey and Iran, which Iran will lose, give Turkey a big head, and on continuing on its whole Ottoman restoration thing slash wanting greater control of global resources, that will eventually, in the 2030s, most likely, drive them to actually like invade northern Iraq, which will bring them into conflict with us, which is when they get curb stomped. But Yeah, I was expecting the Turkey-Iran war like later this decade or early 2030s. It might start sooner than I expected, depending on how the whole Azerbaijan-Armenia stuff goes. But it's looking like that's going to be the pull-in to set that off once it finally goes. Ooh, thank you, whoever you are, Oracle 13 ad. I'm assuming there's supposed to be a D. I'm gonna assume that's Canadian. That came out as $10. Does that looks like the conversion rate for Canadian? You Canadians. I really don't know what that trend is about though. Like in the live viewer count, you see how it's stayed so steady here over the course of the stream? If you can look at like some of my streams where I've talked about Canada in some regard for whatever reason on whatever subject. Whenever I talk about Canada, this has happened 3 times. Like the viewer count will just abruptly drop by at least half. Like for some reason, mentioning Canada just like makes everybody leave. So for some reason, I guess like the majority of my viewers just hate Canada. I'm not sure. Like it might just be a timing coincidence, but it's become a pretty consistent pattern. But the best state, country, really, is mine, Alaska, my home that I would love to go back to, but that would require me consistently making $650 a month or more, which I currently do not. But yes, I would love to get back home. Fairbanks. I'm stuck down here in South Carolina, where it's brutally oppressive hot all the time. There are no seasons. There's also no clean air or wilderness. Everything is just concrete. And also, this state is broke. It has no money. Whereas, so the infrastructure and everything sucks, and there's no public transit. Whereas back up home, uh, we Alaskans, as a state, we have actual money because we, tax oil production and mining outputs now as well. So we have actual money and thus have some of the best maintained infrastructure in the country. And also, up home in Fairbanks, we have amazingly laid out public transit. We have the MAPS bus system. I was able to get around everywhere, anywhere I needed to be with it. All right. If there's nothing from anyone else, then we are going to call it off there. So thank you everybody who showed up. Thank you Oracle 2, the second, especially for the $10. And I will see you all around next time then. The videos are coming. The videos are coming soon. The oil production one, the OPEC production one. Both those datas are out. The oil demand, natural gas production, electricity demand, and shale play performance production are all that data releases next week. So I'll get to work on those next week, and also random stuff along the way. But yeah, that's going to be it. So I will see you all around next time.